Bonjour, bienvenue pour cette table ronde sur l'eau douce, les enjeux d'eau douce. Je suis Marie-Laure Vercambre, la directrice générale du Partenariat français pour l'eau, et je vais avoir le plaisir de modérer cette table ronde qui promet d'être très intéressante. Alors je vais vous annoncer les intervenants. Nous allons accueillir, and I'm going to switch to English, sorry. Sorry for that. I'll start again. That was my reflex. Marie-Laure Vercambre, I'm the Director General of the Freshwater Partnership. And I'll be pleased to moderate the roundtable on freshwater today, which promises to be very interesting. I'm going to give you the names of the speakers. First, we'll have the honor to welcome Ms. Barbara Pompili, Special Envoy to the President of the French Republic for the One Water Summit. And then we will also welcome Alexandre Capelli, who is Environment Deputy Director for the LVMH Group. We will welcome Ms. Bezara, who will represent ecosystems today, as she works for Conservation International. And we will welcome Ms. Delphine Marchi, who represents finance, as she works for the International Finance Corporation. And to begin, we will welcome now Ms. Barbara Pompili.
Hi everybody. Thank you, Marie-Laure. It's a pleasure to be with you today to speak about water. And why is it important today to speak with you about water? Before we begin, let's take a look at some figures. 1 person out of 4 lacks safe drinking water and 1.5 billion lack basic sanitation. Freshwater, for its consumption, represents only 3% of the water on Earth. 69% of it is found in glaciers, half of which will disappear over the course of the century. 9 out of 10 natural disasters are related to water. Demand for water is expected to increase by 50% by 2030. The SDG 6 target of universal and equitable access to water and sanitation by 2030 is far from being reached. Moreover, water is a major issue for many sectors, as agriculture, of course, energy, industries, tourism, and so on and so on. The increasing variability of water cycle is the most visible expression of climate change and must be at the heart of our preoccupations. At the same time, the deterioration of water quality, in particular due to pollution linked to human activity, is increasing its lack of availability. These severe challenges are expected to increase everywhere. Water is already a daily preoccupation for some populations that face both water scarcity, of which drought and the most severe expression of it, and, of course, excess of water due to deregulation of water cycle, such as floods or heavy rains. For these reasons, water has to be at the heart of the multilateral negotiation. And it is clearly not at this moment. Clearly, water and all the water issues are at the second or third or more level of negotiations in the multilateral areas. And it cannot continue like that. That's why President Macron and the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, decided to launch a One Water Summit, which will be organized on the 23rd of September in New York during the next high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly. The summit aims to contribute to the ongoing United Nations discussion and process to enhance global water governance, to accelerate action on SDG 6 and on quasi all the other SDGs, which are related to water. And this is important to have this summit right now because of all these figures I exposed before, and because it is a moment where climate change is a growing preoccupation in our minds and in the geopolitical situation. Never to forget why water has to be at the heart of negotiation. This One Water Summit doesn't aim to be another part of the UN negotiation. It's not the point. The point is to have a framework, the One Planet Summit framework, which is very short and which aims as being a sort of incubator of concrete solutions and projects by stimulating partnerships between state, local authorities, development and private banks, businesses, philanthropists, scientific experts, and civil society in line with previous One Planet Summits. This agenda will be, of course, both local and global. It will be aimed at regions under strong demographic, socio-economic, and climate pressure. It will also be aimed at countries who are accustomed to a form of water abundance, but now need to learn from their partners how to better manage their water resources against emerging pressures and challenges posed to a finite resource. Different subjects for this One Water Summit. First, transboundary cooperation, which is one of the main concerns we have to better manage water. Technical solutions, of course, to reach the human right to water and sanitation everywhere, while preserving environment. Nature-based solutions, of course, but also innovating science, technologies, and so on and so forth. And last, bridging the global financing gap in the water sector. This agenda must be designed and implemented at watershed level by government, local authority, but also all the other actors, private actors, who have definitely an essential role to play in innovating, investing in the infrastructure of tomorrow, and reducing their water footprint of the scale of global value chain. To build this agenda, we need all the stakeholders from all ecosystems. We therefore invite anyone with idea, with a project, on even money to invest, to reach out to us and to discuss the possibility for scaling up and synergies. Thank you, everybody, and be there with us, with the head of states, on the 23rd of September in New York for the One Water Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara. So yes, save the date. It is extremely rare to have a high-level event on freshwater. There was the first conference in 46 years last year, and the One Water Summit during the General Assembly will really catch the attention of decision makers, as we call them, and it is extremely rare and valuable. So save the date. And now we will welcome the other speakers, and so I'd like to invite Alexandre Capelli from LVMH. Miss Delphine Marchi from the International Finance Corporation. And Miss Mayra Bezara, Sorry? Oh, she's online, sorry. Sorry, my mistake. So I hope we'll see her as well. Anyway, yeah, because I was going to start by asking her a question, so. Okay, she's not here? Or is the connection, it's coming. Oh, here she is. Thank you for being with us. Can you hear us and yes, can we hear you?
Yes.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, thank you. So, well, let us know, where are you speaking, where are you here, where are you today actually? Are you in the US?
Well, I am in the US.
You are in the US, okay. Well, welcome and thank you for being with us. Actually, I wanted to start by asking you a question because today, as I was saying, you actually represent the ecosystems. You represent the lakes, the rivers, the flora, the fauna, and therefore we wanted to start with with you to set the stage perhaps and to share with us what the stakes are for you, where we're coming from. We all know there's a key word that is a global water crisis. It is not only environmental, but you're going to talk about the environmental stakes and about what is the situation that we're facing. Some of them were introduced by Ms. Pompili, but perhaps you can share with us a little more.
Sure. Thank you, Marie-Laure, and thank you so much for having me here. I love the fact that I'm representing freshwater ecosystems today. But unfortunately, I must share that freshwater ecosystems have experienced the worst declines of all ecosystems globally. Because they are the connectors in any given landscape, freshwater ecosystems are extremely susceptible to change. So for example, over a third of all wetlands in the world have experienced declines from 1970 to 2015, a rate that is 3 times more than of forest decline. In this particular case, land cover change and habitat degradation for the establishment of intensive agriculture and urbanization are key drivers of wetlands loss. The construction of dams is another major factor impacting freshwater ecosystems. Today, only 1/3 of large rivers in the whole world flow freely from source to sea. This fragmentation has resulted in a loss of freshwater species biodiversity. Today, 83% of all freshwater biodiversity is lost, which is much less than any terrestrial ecosystem. And last but not least, Barbara mentioned this in her introduction, the release of untreated wastewater into streams and rivers. 80% of the world's wastewater goes into streams and rivers directly without treatment. These, together with continued land use changes, growing industrialization, has created an unprecedented water crisis. But when I talk about influence of human activities, I always like to mention that we cannot forget the people, meaning that the large population on planet Earth are dependent on the benefits of freshwater ecosystems, from basic water supply to electricity generation. So managing freshwater ecosystems in many places on Earth, meaning trade-offs, managing trade-offs. We need to find a fine balance to allow the ecosystems to thrive while providing the benefits that people depend on. And that is why at Conservation International, we are focused on the concept of healthy watersheds to benefit both people and nature.
Thank you. So that is for the anthropic impact, the change of land use, the draining of wetlands, the pollution of all of the wastewater that is released in the ecosystems, in the environment without treatment. The figures are really, really, really striking. We are doing better in our countries, in Europe and in other countries, but overall in the world, untreated water is an absolute disaster in terms of amounts of water that we're talking about. And then, of course, there is how much water we extract from the environment and how much water is left for nature to work, to sustain its own life. So these are really keywords that we're going to talk about. And I'd like to turn to the representative now of LVMH, a big fashion group overall, not only fashion, I know, maybe you'll get into this. We know that for sure the textile industry is a huge user of fresh water. You need water, well, we need water for everything anyway, right? To produce anything. We need water to produce oil to begin with, so we need water for everything. Maybe you can give us examples about the challenges that your group is facing when it comes to water and what kind of action you're taking.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for inviting me today first. And yes, first I would like to say that the preservation of environment is quite a long-standing commitment at LVMH. It all started more than 30 years ago in 1992. So, our current strategy called Life 360 has a new pillar. So we have a circularity pillar, a climate pillar, a transparency pillar. And we have enriched our strategy last year by a new water pillar. And first, to do that, we need to measure, to understand our impact. So the idea was to evaluate the environmental footprint, the water footprint of our own operation, but also across the whole value chain, upstream and downstream. And to do that, you know, of course, water footprinting is not as advanced, as mature as climate footprinting, but still, we make a lot of progresses. And I'm quite confident that the figure that we are able to have today are quite reliable. So, for instance, I can say that for our own operation, in 2022, it was 13 million water cubic meter. For the value chain, 130 million water cubic meter. So, you know, you can understand that our value chain is more than 90% of our water footprinting. When we do that, what can we do? We have evaluate what is the margin of progress. What can we do? What is the action plan to reduce this water footprint, both in our own operation, but also across the value chain? I'm discussing with all our brands, more than 75 brands in fashion, in wines, in perfumes, hotels, selective retailing. We have evaluated that we can quite confidently achieve a minus 30% reduction by 2030 with a 2019 baseline. How can we do that? First, by implementing some recycling system in distilleries, in tanneries, in mills. Second, by implementing some best technologies to save water consumption, water in hotels. The big topic for us in our own operation is also irrigation in wine and spirits. We don't irrigate in France, but we have to irrigate vineyards in some countries like California, as Argentina. And just as illustration, these two vineyards represent more than 80% of our water agricultural consumption. So it's huge, even if it's only two vineyards. So we have implemented the best technology to reduce water irrigation in these two vineyards, but still we can do progress. I won't go too deep into details, but as drip irrigation, water stress, also achieving to stress the vineyards at the maximum. Analyzes the soil, analyzes the plant to really reduce water needs. And then across the value chain, it's mainly relying on regenerative agriculture, how we can implement regenerative agriculture to increase the capacity of soil to stock water for cotton, for wool, for, again, grapes. We have many raw material coming from agriculture within our supply chain. So it's really about implementing regenerative agriculture. And I would also say that it's not directly linked to consumption, but we are also targeting to add to our product information system to inform the customer of what is the water impact of our product. We are not only working on water, it's also climate impact, but also water is key. And we do think that by sharing this information at product level and not only at corporate level, it's also a way to inform people, to inform customers of what is the impact of our product. So the target is to implement this kind of process by 2026. And last but not least, yes, governance. But governance is key. You have the measure, you have the action plan, you have the target, but you also need a governance system. So of course the target is approved by the board, but then we need to implement the target within all, across the 75 maisons of the group. And we're also part of many collaborative action. I could mention the CEO Water Mandate, but maybe I will talk about that later, which is a very, on water, very interesting organization, at least for corporate companies. We are also testing the science-based nature framework, with us also focusing on biodiversity, but also on water. And we are testing this new framework on 2 landscapes. One is Kashmir, and another one is NC, so in Cognac. And we also are part of the TNFD. I don't know TNFD if everyone knows that. TNFD is a task force on nature-related financial disclosure. So it's making the link between financial disclosure and environmental disclosure. And of course, we have a huge pillar on water on this TNFD system. TCFD for climate is already existing for years, and now for 2 years we have the TNFD, which is the equivalent for biodiversity and water. And all these governance systems are also a way to accelerate the water topic across the industry, I think. Sorry, a bit long.
Yeah, we can continue later. But yes, you should remember the term regenerative agriculture. It is a very important word that you can look up. And we'll go back to the finance, to what you mentioned, but I think that a lot of practitioners agree that the guidelines that we have so far on water needs to be deepened and needs to be improved also to become more ambitious. I'm talking about the CDP, you know, all of these frameworks that you are following, not you, LVMH, but a lot of important groups are following. I mean, it's coming from your side that it needs to be improved and it needs to go further. So there's a demand there, and maybe the One Water Summit will address this. Now I'd like to turn to Ms. Bezzara again. Sorry for the order. I will come to finance right after, but I wanted you to react on what the gentleman from LVMH just said. Because I think that one of the things you do at CI, at Conservation International, is to work with companies, is to work with big groups to accompany them as they try to improve their water footprint precisely. Can you give us a few details? Because I think it's a role that is not always very well known, and maybe give us an example of how you do that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the question. And actually, Conservation International, as you said, has been partnering with companies to conserve nature for people for decades now. And there are 3 main steps that we work with businesses. So the first one is something that Alexandre mentioned. It's related to changing the supply and sourcing practices to more sustainable systems that can create both benefit for people and nature. So we call this transform production. So we advise on regenerative agriculture, for instance. We like to inspire and activate. So we work with companies to show them the value of protecting nature and encourage them to support conservation efforts. And the third way that we work with business is to investments in nature. Business needs to understand that protecting nature is not only to benefit their own production system, but also to benefit the whole humanity. And one particular example that is dear to my heart is a project that the Freshwater Science Team is leading with CI Mexico in Mexico. We have partnered with a private donor to invest in wetland restoration. together with the Universidad Autónoma de Mexico, we are promoting the renaissance of an ancestral farming practice that is not only increasing the local supply of food for the city of Mexico, which is huge, but is also helping not only conserve the wetland system that they have, but also it's promoting the protection of a charismatic and threatened species, which is a wild salamander. The other way that Conservation International work with private companies is through public-private partnerships. And we do that through innovations in finance. We are creating different products using conventional financial instruments towards green investments. So by doing that, we hope that we are promoting long-term protection of nature at scale. In the freshwater context, we are working to adapt the RISCO model. RISCO means Restoration Insurance Service Company that was created by CI to protect coastal systems, but we want to adapt that to freshwater context. And the idea here is very simple. We want to invest in conservation and restoration of areas with high value assets. For instance, those places that have properties of high value and that are impacted by constant flooding. And we want to protect freshwater ecosystems to reduce the risk of flooding, then decreasing the property damage that could happen if we didn't protect nature. So these are just two examples of how Conservation International is working with businesses and private companies.
Thank you very much. So I would like to turn to the financial world now, or big international global institutions such as yours, and ask you a very open question, because I think most of us need to understand better what kind of leverage an organization such like yours can have when facing, the global water crisis. Maybe you can start with this, and then we'll go to the partnerships that you might.
Working? Thank you very much. And I think the question of financing is obvious, because we know, and it's increasing, that to tackle these the various challenges of water, there is a lot of capital that is needed. Even from what you describe, I think a question of how much you invest to find these solutions.
Sorry, perhaps you could explain also for the audience what the IFC is.
I was about to
I
suspect that IFC is less known than LVMH in the audience. IFC stands for International Finance Corporation. We're part of the World Bank Group. So the World Bank Group is probably most known for you, and the World Bank Group is probably known for supporting governments, lending to governments and municipalities, working with them on policy reforms and sector reforms. Within that group, IFC has a focus, and the focus is on supporting, investing, financing initiatives and projects that are led by the private sector or involve the private sector. And we are actually we're a development finance institution, so our mission is really to finance and invest in projects that demonstrate support to the SDGs, and now our mandate has really absorbed the climate agenda, because it is very intertwined with the SDGs, and I think we're the largest and oldest development finance institution in the world. I think we have invested 300 billion so far. And because we have that development and climate targets, infrastructure is very, very core to what and where IFC and the World Bank invest and support. And water, in the past few years, has become one of the top 3 priorities of the whole group. we're extremely keen to move the needle. The positioning that we have when I talk about infrastructure, I think I should clarify that as well, because infrastructure for us means investing and supporting these very structuring projects, desalination projects, irrigation projects, wastewater and treatment projects that are led by municipality and governments and require dozens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. But we're also very keen to support supply chain solutions that were described by LVMH. We estimate at the World Bank that there is a need for a huge amount of money. This is mind-blowing, trillions of billions by 2030, 25 trillion by 2050. And the reality is that there is just so little that goes to water. Compared to energy projects, compared to transport projects, we invest in telecom infrastructure. We really have a hard time finding projects in which we see private sector appetite to go invest and to finance. And even the past 30 years, MDBs have had a hard time, investing. And the recurring challenges are about how the sector works. We focus on emerging markets, so I think around the 4 continents we see the toughest situations. And a recurring aspect is linked to the fact that water is considered a public good, and it's hard for governments, it's even hard for us as financiers to put a price on water. It's considered to be a basic universal need that people and even industries would need water. And this doesn't reconcile very well with private sector investment that need to see and expect a return. So very typically, there is a lack of recovery of costs and a gap in the viability of investment thesis. There is also typically an issue with the regulation, with the policies, with the creditworthiness of municipalities and governments that will be welcoming the investments. So these are like recurring challenges for investment, unfortunately. So the question of leverage. I think it is obvious that first of all, the world realizes that there is a need for private investment, but also the idea that to get there, these utilities should be privatized I think is behind us. It's like we're moving away from that thesis. And at IFC World Bank Group, we fully agree that the leverage should start from that idea that there should be a cooperation between the various stakeholders, between the public sector and between the private sector. So what we want to establish more and more is the concept of private-public partnership. It's proven to work in some countries. There are some countries that still qualify as emerging markets, but in Brazil, there is a huge pipeline of investment having been made. And I think we've invested 500 million, $500 million in Brazil water infrastructure with PPP that we've supported to be transparent and fairly procured. So we can see where the needle is moved. But really that idea that we should look for these private-public partnership or hybrid models in some kind of way. It's not just the public, it's not the private. We've got to find how that can work and replicate these kind of solutions. A way that we're also working with IFC is along those lines, leverage us as a group. IFC is a group of institutions. We have our colleagues working with governments, lending to governments, supporting on reforms, and us working with the private sector. We've got to work together so that we leverage the government traction that we get to pass policy reform, saying, hey, for a private company, or for a private financier to invest or finance, you need to change this and that in the regulation. And they also help make the public sector comfortable with the intentions and the objectives of privately driven partners. So we also find that municipalities and governments, they don't necessarily see what happens and is successful elsewhere. So we systematically try to help them realize and see and study how things can be successful outside of their own countries. So our World Bank colleagues, they spend time on diagnostic, sector diagnostic, country diagnostic, strategies and roadmaps to support the government in trying to take action. And another very obvious point is that's very nice, but I think there is such a massive gap in terms of viability and commerciality of the investment that I think there is an obvious need to put some free money in there. So blended finance, it's my last point, concessional finance should go alongside private financing. So we try to mobilize grants and free money to help bridge that gap between public and private investment. So,
thank you very much. Ms. Pompili, did you want to say something? I see you took the mic. Otherwise, I'll close. But please go ahead.
Yeah. You see, when we hear about some actors, we understand how tremendous is the challenge, because clearly water is everywhere, and the first thing we have to do is to enhance the awareness of that. And that's why water footprint is clearly a very interesting tool for companies, for them to understand their need and their need of water, but also for people like you and me to understand that when we buy something, there is water there. And to understand that this water is clearly will lack for some actors. So it is very important to assess our needs, to assess how we can save water, we can protect water, and how we can work as an ecosystem to share water and to, of course, manage well water. And for that, we need some tools. I think the diagnostics the World Bank is doing for local authorities or countries is very important, because we have many actors, policymakers, who don't know where to begin because it's too much. It's so huge for them. It's important, and with that diagnostic, we can provide also some tools to address these needs. And it is very important to promote science and to promote R&D on new technologies. And we hear a lot of things about desalination, about reuse, about also monitoring on water, but we have to help to help those policymakers to do the right choices, because of course desalination has to be used in some places, but maybe before it is more important to save water, to think about to work about leakages of water, and to think about nature-based solution, for example, which will be less expensive, less need less energy to produce water. And that's why I think we need international cooperation. We need to share experiences. We need to share data. This is very important to think about how to share data on water to provide to some countries early warning systems for them to be ready when there is a problem. So you see, this is, I think, a work in progress. This is a beginning of some very interesting cooperation. Clearly, the financing gap is not is too big right now, but you are working on it. We have to think about all the little projects. We cannot be clearly financed by World Bank or IFC, but with other stakeholders. So this is what we want to address during the One Water Summit, and I think we will see again some actors like LVMH of IFC or Nature Conservancy during this meeting.
Thank you very much. And I think on this we will leave you. Thank you. And you can come and ask questions to us afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.